Shocking prophecy revealed, the prophet who foretold Israel's end and faced skepticism. Few knew what truly happened that night. It was dark, the kind of darkness that seemed to swallow whole the flickering lights of the oil lamps. In the ancient streets of Jerusalem, whispers floated through the air, heavy with unease. People gathered, exchanging fearful glances. They had heard the rumors. The end was near. A prophet stood amongst them, and his words pierced the night like daggers. Ezekiel, a name that stirred curiosity and dread. He was known not just for his prophecies, but for the awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping visions that came to him during his trance-like moments. What was he seeing? What did those strange symbols mean? His latest revelation spoke of ruin, of a shattered city. There were those who listened with solemn nods, and others who laughed, mocking the man they called mad. But deep down, the anxious fluttering in their hearts suggested they feared he spoke the truth. The hot sun had barely risen over the hills of Judea when Ezekiel stood at the edge of the river Chebar, clenching his fists. He had seen visions, wheeled creatures with many faces, a storm cloud of fire and brightness that was both terrifying and captivating. He could barely comprehend them, yet he felt they were undeniably important. How could he convey these messages? Would anyone believe the warnings he brought forth? Would they dismiss him as a mere lunatic, hiding under layers of skepticism? As he approached the crowd, tension hung thick. Mothers clutched their children as the winds whipped through ancient olive trees, whispering secrets only they knew. Men and women, curious yet fearful, leaned in to hear the prophet's voice. What could he say that hadn't already been questioned? They wanted to know, but were they ready to listen? His heart raced, the air was electric. Could it be their fate rested in his hands? And so, with ink on cracked parchment, Ezekiel began to speak. Words spilled forth like ink from a broken quill, vivid and urgent. Jerusalem, a forsaken city. The glory shall depart, and ruin shall fall. Shocking gasps echoed against the stone walls, ripples of disbelief coursing through the crowd. Children stared wide-eyed, while others exchanged nervous looks. Was it fear? Was it denial? Or a dawning realization that this time, something was different? As they stood gripped by the weight of his message, the question hung in the air: would they heed the warning, or would they let the specter of disbelief lead them to disaster? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the weight of Ezekiel's words settled heavily in the hearts of those gathered, an uneasy silence ensued, broken only by the distant sound of rustling leaves and the murmurs of incredulity. The crowd was a mix of the fearful and the indifferent, but all shared a common yearning for understanding. Ezekiel raised his arms, palms open to the heavens, as if begging for divine insight to guide his next utterances. In that moment, a sudden gust of wind swept through the throng, carrying whispers that almost felt tangible. The prophet sensed a shift in the atmosphere, the gathering clouds above reflected in the worried faces below. What if the storm that loomed was not just of nature, but one of the spirit and fate? Ezekiel closed his eyes, striving to interpret the echoes of his vision more clearly. Perhaps this chaos was a manifestation of the emotional tide swirling among the people: confusion, doubt, fear and hope, all entwined. Listen, he cried, his voice rising like thunder against the distant rumble of clouds. This is not a simple declaration but a call. Each one of you must ponder your conduct, for the fate of our beloved Jerusalem is intertwined with your hearts. In your hands lies the power of repentance. Yes, the end is foretold, but the path to salvation remains open. Still, he could feel skepticism emanating from many like an invisible barrier. Baffled eyes met him, frozen between belief and disbelief. While some hung on his every word, others snickered, whispering amongst themselves of visions being nothing more than reflections of a troubled soul. Yet the prophet's heart swelled with a profound sadness. He was not here to convince the onlookers but to convey what had been entrusted to him, a burden that weighed heavily upon him day and night. From the back of the assembled crowd, a voice pierced through the din. An elderly man, weathered by time and trials, rose slowly, his face a map of desolation. "What of hope, prophet?" he asked softly, the tremor in his voice betraying a lifetime of despair. "What hope can arise from such ruin? Is there no salvation for the faithful? Must we wait for the halting of the sun and the shattering of our homes before we reach towards grace?" Ezekiel's heart ached. He understood the despair that had long suffocated his people, yet he also felt the fervor of faith that, like flickering embers, could be fanned into a flame. "Hope envelopes truth as the dawn chases the night," he proclaimed with clarity. "But it is a hope that requires action. Will you not tremble in self-reflection? Will you not open your hearts to the possibility of repentance?" Yet, even as he spoke, a sense of futility lingered in the air, a foreshadowing of resistance. Would they not rather mock the messenger than embrace the message? Each face before him was a story, a shadow of pride or pain. What greater tragedy could there be than to witness the promise of restoration meet an unwavering wall of disbelief? As the sunlight filtered through the thickening clouds, casting ethereal shadows upon the stones, one thought hung heavy in the air, unresolved yet pressing. Could the heart of this city shift from scorn to service? Would they dare to seek the elusive thread of hope amidst the unraveling tapestry of fate? As the winds howled and the clouds darkened, the tension among the crowd intensified. Ezekiel felt the electric pulse of uncertainty coursing through him. The gathering was on the brink not just of chaos, but also of revelation. His eyes scanned the faces, the anxious mothers cradling their children, the hardened soldiers wrestling with their own fears, the elders burdened by the weight of history. Each one stood at the nexus of faith and doubt, poised to listen or to turn away. "Your hearts are the soil from which your future grows," Ezekiel urged, striving to inspire passion rather than fear. "Even now, you can choose to cultivate yourselves into beings worthy of mercy. What shall you plant? Seeds of despair or hope? The choice is laid before you." The elderly man who had posed the question of hope still stood, his eyes searching for something more. "What does this hope look like, prophet? What if we are beyond restoration? What if we stand at the edge of an irreversible chasm?" With a measured breath, Ezekiel centered himself, aware that he needed to speak from the depths of his revelation. "Hope," he declared slowly, "is not the absence of turmoil but the presence of faith amid the storm. It is the whisper of the divine that echoes even in the darkest nights. It beckons, urging you to remember the covenant made with our forefathers." He gestured toward the temple, its majestic silhouette rising against the foreboding sky, a beacon of their shared identity. The temple is more than stone, it is a reminder of what we are capable of when we are aligned with the Most High. When the spirit of unity binds us together, even the most fearful can become the fiercest advocates of transformation. The crowd shifted, stirred by his words, but the murmurs of skepticism still loomed like a shadow. Ezekiel sensed their hesitation, perhaps they felt that action required too much. What would repentance demand of them? What sacrifices would they have to make? It was this uncertainty that tethered them to their skepticism, a fear more paralyzing than the impending doom. A young woman stepped forward, her face alight with frustration. "But what if we yearn for change yet find ourselves trapped by the chains of our past? What can be done for the weary?" The question hung in the air, powerful with all the unspoken fears of the gathering. "Even the chains cannot deny the spirit," Ezekiel replied, speaking from a place of deep understanding. "They can shackle the body, but the spirit can soar above them, seeking connection to the sacred." The wind shifted again, unsettling the crowd further, and the air grew thick with anticipation, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. It was then that Ezekiel felt a surge of clarity that illuminated a new path. "I see a vision," he exclaimed, addressing the assembly with newfound fervor. "A valley of dry bones. But in the breath of the Almighty, they rise. Skin forms, and flesh returns. It is a transformation that is possible. You stand at the threshold of revival. Will you choose to rise? With these words, a hushed awe fell over the onlookers. Could they truly envision such a metamorphosis? Was it within them to dare to believe in restoration, to dare to engage with the divine? Yet amidst the flicker of hope, deep questions lingered. Would the people cast off their doubts long enough to embrace this vision? Would they not cling to the familiar comfort of despair rather than embrace the uncomfortable path of change? Ezekiel met each gaze, searching for the embers of faith that might ignite a collective awakening. And in the stillness that followed, as the shadows of doubt mingled with the warmth of yearning, the unanswered question echoed among them: could they, in their uncertainty, reach for the transformative breath of life that could revive their hearts and reshape their destiny? Ezekiel stood firm, his heart racing as he felt the palpable energy within the crowd, a storm of emotions swirling around him. Some faces betrayed a flicker of belief, while others remained shuttered in doubt, still shrouded by the scars of past failures. As the sun struggled to break through the dense clouds, Ezekiel recalled the stories of his ancestors' stories of trials, wanderings, and unwavering faith that ultimately led to redemption. What if we are merely dreaming? A voice called from the back of the gathering, thick with cynicism. What if there is no breath of life to breathe into this desolation? You speak of resurrection, but what proof do we have? Can faith alone conquer the darkness? Ezekiel considered this. The question resonated deeply within him, a reminder that belief is often confronted by stark realities. What is faith? He replied, if not the bridge that spans the chasm between despair and hope? It is in our willingness to leap into the unknown that we discover the depths of our connection to the divine and to one another. The storm clouds churned above, their fury mirrored the turmoil in the hearts of the crowd. Yet amidst the brewing uncertainty, he was reminded of his own journey, how each vision had drawn him closer to an understanding of divine promises. He had witnessed the burning bush, felt the tremors of the earth when the Spirit moved, and heard the murmurs of angels, each instance threading together the tapestry of his faith. Stepping forward, he called upon the divine power that surged through him, channeling it into his words. Remember the Exodus. Our people were once enslaved, wandering in the wilderness. But they were not abandoned, they were led. Even when hope seemed lost, they found sustenance, strength from the Most High. What if our present struggle mirrors their journey? What if each obstacle is a testimony waiting to be told? As he spoke, the crowd shifted, some exchanging glances, a nascent spark of understanding flickering amidst the skepticism. But he sensed an unyielding fear that lingered, fear of allowing the past to dictate their future. Do not allow the chains of history to bind your spirit, Ezekiel continued, emboldened. What if your chains, the very burdens you carry, are the keys to unlocking not just your potential but the potential of generations to come? There lies within each of you the capacity for transformation, to embrace a different legacy. It is the willingness to confront your own fears that will set the course for what is yet to unfold. That he could see the weight on their shoulders, he could hear the unspoken cries for help mingled with the winds. A child's whimper broke through the tension, and Ezekiel felt a profound longing simmer within him to guide them toward a shared understanding. Here is the mystery, friends, he said softly, looking into their eyes one by one. Will you risk the unknown for a chance at reconnection? Will you tread into the valley with me, knowing that each step forward might lead forth a revival not just for yourself but for all of Israel? The divine has not turned away, the breath of life awaits. It is in the vulnerability of sharing your burdens, your histories, that you can rise anew. Silence enveloped the gathering. In this stillness, the air thickened with potential. Ezekiel felt the fabric of faith weaving amongst his people, binding dismantled hopes and dreams that had once seemed lost. Yet as the winds whispered through the valley, an unsettling question hung like a veil of fog: would they allow their fear to stifle their faith, or would they embrace the uncharted path ahead, stepping into the mystery of what might be if only they dared to believe? Ezekiel stood in the charged atmosphere, the dreams of his ancestors echoing in the tumultuous silence that followed his words. The crowd shifted uneasily, eyes wide with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Each soul bore the markers of their own trials, stories knitted into the very fabric of their being. The shadows danced along their faces, reflecting lives marked by doubt, longing, and an almost forgotten yearning for liberation. Can we truly rise from this desolation? Someone called again, this time a woman with deep lines etched into her brow, a testament to burdens she had carried for far too long. What if our faith has faltered enough that the heavens have turned against us? Ezekiel felt the weight of her question pressing into the core of his spirit. He remembered countless nights spent pleading with the divine, desperate for answers to the unanswered prayers of his people. The heavens do not fold or forget, he implored gently, but they call us to awaken to what is within. Have we not been molded like clay, each hardship shaping us toward purpose? The wind picked up, a fleeting breath that swept across their faces, a reminder of the divine presence that surrounded them. He gestured to the hills that framed the valley. Look at the stones beneath your feet. They have witnessed the ebbs and flows of life, years of drought followed by seasons of abundant rain. Life is not a linear journey, it ebbs and flows, reflecting the heart of God. That he paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. As the sun peeked through the parting clouds, golden light illuminated the path ahead, revealing the contours of the terrain, raw and untamed. Before the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, they faced the seemingly impossible. They stood before the waters, their hearts pounding in fear, yet they were given a choice: either take the first step toward the unknown or to turn back into bondage. Our moment is no different. Ezekiel's words veered toward fervor as he imagined the possibilities. Imagine if we chose to stand at the edge of our Red Sea, together, resolute against the tides of despair. What deliverance waits beyond our willingness to act, to trust? In that moment, Ezekiel glimpsed the flicker of resolve within a few faces, a gentle awakening stirred by the resonance of shared dreams. Yet there were still those who wore denial like a shroud. Were they simply too weary to fight for their own hope? A sudden commotion ripped through the crowd. A young boy, perhaps no more than 10, had darted to the front, his brown hair tousled and wild. What if we fail? He cried out, his voice slicing through the air. What if we jump and there's nothing there? What if the darkness swallows us whole? Ezekiel knelt down, meeting the boy's gaze with unflinching tenderness. Ah, dear child, it is a powerful fear you speak, he said, sensing the raw vulnerability in the boy's eyes. Yet, consider this, would it not hurt more to hold on to despair, to let it consume you, than to leap and discover what the divine has waiting just beyond? Around them, emotions swelled like waves, washing over the hearts of the assembly. Some appeared stirred, while others remained entrenched in their skepticism, the dramatic tension layered and palpable. Ezekiel's heart ached, desiring to ignite the dormant embers of hope within every single soul present. Look within yourselves, he cried, hoping to inspire a collective introspection. You are alive with potential, each moment a new canvas, begging to be painted with bold strokes of faith and courage. This moment has been ordained, this gathering is no mere happenstance. The mysteries of the universe await your embrace. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows and painting the sky in shades of fiery orange and deep indigo, a subtle tension hung like an unseen thread among them. Ezekiel could sense their hearts wrestling with his call, caught between the shackles of fear and the promise of belief, but as he rose to his feet, he felt an unsettling tremor in the air. Something deeper, something more daunting loomed ahead, a truth yet unspoken. Would they dare to confront the ravines of their past as they ventured toward the dawn of a shared destiny? Or would fear, in its relentless grip, claim yet another generation, leaving them stranded on the cusp of transformation? And in that moment, under the expansive heavens, Ezekiel pondered what it truly meant to believe in the unseen. What awaited them on the other side of belief? Ezekiel stood before the gathering, the dusk settling around them like the weight of their collective doubts. The air shimmered with unvoiced fears, and amid the brightening stars, the questions of many echoed, each more pressing than the last. It was as if the heavens themselves conspired to silence those haunted whispers of uncertainty. Behold, he continued, amplifying the urgency of his voice as he sensed the rising tide of attention, the earth beneath us trembles not only with the pulse of our hearts but with the cries of our forebears, who wandered to find the promised land. They too felt the weight of despair and the fog of uncertainty. His words hung heavily, demanding courage and self-assessment from the crowd. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a figure at the fringes, obscured partly by the looming shadows. It was an elder, her hair a cascade of silver threaded with memories, eyes glistening with experiences that had weathered storms and basked in quiet joys. She stepped forward, her voice shaking yet resolute. "What of the vision you bear, Ezekiel? Are we to believe that which has been foretold when our present feels so laden with grief?" Ezekiel smiled at her, knowing that she encapsulated the heart of their struggle. "Ah, dear one, can you recall the dreams woven into the fabric of your life? The visions that prophets once shared? They were not illusions but rather portals of the divine. They are not intended to scare us but to awaken us." The crowd murmured, vacillating between hope and doubt, each beat of their hearts echoing the age-old battle between faith and fear. Suddenly, a low ripple of discontent surged through the throng. "But how can we trust in these promises when our paths have been strewn with hardships and shadows?" Another voice cried, embodying the skepticism that had held many captive. "What assurance do we have that deliverance awaits us?" Ezekiel closed his eyes for a brief moment, calling on the wisdom that surged through ancient stories. He opened them slowly, allowing his gaze to rest on the multitude. What of Sarah, who laughed when told she would bear a child at such an age, yet became the mother of nations? What of Elijah, who stood boldly before the prophets of Baal, calling fire from heaven? In their moments of doubt, they took a leap, choosing faith over their visual limitations. His voice crescendoed, gripping their attention as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky. If all that is revealed is our current plight, we risk missing the wondrous designs still unfolding. What if we have veiled our sight by our own struggles? As he spoke, a gentle breeze stirred, mingling the aroma of the earth with the fragrant breaths of anticipation. The anger and doubt that welled within these dynamic hearts were beginning to fuse with a hint of longing for something greater. It is in the very act of standing near the edge of despair that the greatest miracles often begin, Ezekiel urged, driven by an unseen current. Do we believe that the divine crafted us to be stagnant amidst the chaos? Or did we emerge into being with the possibility of soaring beyond? The crowd, once a medley of confusion and hostility, began to shift, eyes opened wider, shimmering with newfound reflections. Yet still, the elder remained rooted in her position, a determined expression etched onto her features. "And what of the doom you hinted at, Ezekiel? Should we not heed the words of the past? Is it not foretold that our disobedience will yield destruction?" Ezekiel met her gaze with unwavering clarity, sensing the need for balance in their fear. "Yes, it is true," he replied earnestly, "but understand, the shadows of our past do not seal our fate. They are heralds, calling us to act and to choose. Remember, to speak truth, even when it terrifies us, does not cast away the hope of tomorrow." Silence enveloped them, pregnant with the weight of their shared histories and reconciled spirits. A unity struggled and wrestled within, each soul stirring, uneasily questioning their beliefs, their purpose. Ezekiel felt the push and pull of anticipation, yet there was still a thread of uncertainty, a gap between knowing and believing. But as the stars glimmered in the deepening night, Ezekiel was taken by a prophetic clarity, one that felt both exhilarating and burdensome. What would it take to bridge that gap? What would they need to confront within themselves to take that first step toward the promise of tomorrow? In that moment of profound reflection, under the celestial gaze of the heavens, the unresolved mysteries of their hearts hung in the air like stars waiting to be claimed. Would they venture forth with the risk of belief? Or would they remain shackled by their past, forever on the cusp of destiny? Ezekiel lingered in the silence, his eyes drawn upwards to the vast sky now adorned with shimmering celestial bodies. The unsettling blend of emotions in the crowd mirrored the starlight above each flicker, a unique struggle, a reflection of yearning for understanding and meaning. He was acutely aware that beneath their hopeful gazes lay a tapestry of fear, woven tightly with the threads of despair. "Listen, my friends," he continued, stepping forward with deliberate grace. "The stars above are more than mere adornments of the night. They speak to us, a cosmic reminder of promises that stretch across time. In their vastness, they reveal the infinite possibilities before us, urging us to look beyond our immediate surroundings." His words resonated, yet doubt grazed the edges of their trust. Among the gathering, a young man named Obadiah raised his hand, eyes burning with intensity. Yet when we look back, all we see are scars, wounds that have not healed. How do we reconcile such pain with the promise of deliverance? Is it not a cruel jest to be told to hope when sorrow lingers so closely? The question hung heavy in the air, inviting contemplation. Ezekiel sensed the gravity behind Obadiah's words. Could hope truly exist alongside hurt without contradiction? What was a promise worth if it came wrapped in sorrow? Pain is a part of our shared story, Ezekiel replied softly, allowing compassion to bleed into his voice. It is a river through which we navigate, sometimes dark and turbulent. Yet, within that same river, the waters also hold the potential for growth and renewal. Look at the flowers that bloom after a storm, they remind us that beauty often rises from desolation. As murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, the elder from before stepped forth yet again, her voice steady. But how can we rise? Our choices seem limited, each one weighted with consequences. In our pursuit of renewal, could we not drown in our own efforts? Ezekiel felt a surge of weighty introspection as he turned to her, recognizing the mirrored depths of her uncertainty. Yes, he acknowledged, the fear of drowning can bind us fiercely. Yet consider the story of Jonah, who fled from his destiny, swallowed by darkness. Even in that abyss, he found a pathway back to light. There lies wisdom in struggle, a lesson born through trial. The crowd shifted restlessly, torn between the threads of hope and despair. But it isn't the prophets who bear our burdens, a woman voiced from the rear, her tone laden with an age-old skepticism. They speak of visions and dreams. Do they dare to walk in our footsteps? Can they shoulder the weight that we carry day by day? Ezekiel paused, the question igniting a spark within him. Prophets have always walked the line between the celestial and the earthly, converging at the nexus of despair and hope. I am but a vessel, dear ones, he said, sincerity weaving through his words. But each of you carries the essence of the divine within. Let us not isolate prophecy to mere words but rather see it as an invitation to breathe life into our own stories. Yet, even as he spoke, he could feel the undercurrents of resistance, the battle between belief and the scars of reality. How do we embrace the truth of a promise when each day speaks of reality that belies that truth? Someone else called, their voice cutting through the vulnerability of the moment. Ezekiel looked deeply into the sea of faces, each reflecting a narrative of triumphs and tribulations. We must be willing to embark on the journey together. Trust is a bridge, one that can be rebuilt even in the crevices of doubt. What if we became agents of that promise? Each act of kindness, each moment of forgiveness a stepping stone toward transformation, but that bridge still felt distant. The flickering candles of hope were tempered by fervent skepticism that brewed just beneath the surface. The crowd whispered amongst themselves, voices blending and intertwining, and Ezekiel knew he had yet to capture their heart entirely. As the night deepened, a palpable weight settled over them, mingled with wonder and uncertainty. Amid the looming shadows, could they see the dawn before it arrived? And in their hearts, would they dare to let hope dictate their journey? In this sacred space of ambiguity, Ezekiel pondered a deeper truth. What does it truly mean for a people to choose belief over despair? What might they need to release, or embrace, to awaken the divine narratives hidden within their lives? Ezekiel stood in the midst of the gathering, the shadows of night woven tightly around their fears and hopes alike. As he scanned the familiar faces, he sensed an unbroken thread of anxiety, a longing for reassurance that perhaps even he could not fully provide. The stars overhead shone brightly, yet they seemed to cast whispers of something both ominous and beautiful, a dichotomy that mirrored the dualities of existence, faith and doubt, light and darkness. In the silence that followed, a soft wind picked up, swirling dust around their feet as if the earth itself was listening. Ezekiel's thoughts drifted to the tales of the ancients. Stories of Exodus and redemption hung heavy in the air, each echoing the cyclical nature of loss and recovery. There are times, he began, his voice threaded with reverence, when the horizon ahead seems shrouded in fog, yet still we must walk. We must take each step, however unsure, as an act of faith, a belief that the path may reveal itself in time. His words stirred something within the crowd, yet many remained anchored in skepticism. A voice, sharper than the rest, lashed out. But for how long must we walk in darkness, only to see the flicker of dawn elude us? What if we never grasp the light? Ezekiel closed his eyes momentarily, collecting the emotions in the space around him. He understood too well the sorrow of spiritual thirst. He himself had felt the parched desperation echoed in that very question. Ah, but remember, he responded, the dawn does not arrive unannounced, it is birthed from the labor of night. Perhaps the very act of waiting is where we find the essence of what we seek. As murmurs of contemplation rippled through the assembly, a small child, no more than 5, stepped forward from the crowd. Her innocence radiated like a beacon in the dim light, and her eyes sparkled with a brightness untainted by doubt. Will the dawn be like the stories you tell? Will it be more than just light? She asked, her voice sweet yet profound. Ezekiel bent down, captivated by her earnestness. It may be. The dawn holds promise and invitation to embrace a new day. But each day is like a canvas, it is up to us to paint it with the colors of our choices. It is not merely the arrival of light, but what we choose to create in that light that matters. As laughter and whispers circled around the child, he sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a softening of the hearts that had been so tightly clenched. Yet, deep within, the weight of history and prophecy bore down upon Ezekiel like an unseen burden. The fate of the people drifted in the air, an unresolved tension that danced between their gathering and the eternal question of divinity's response to their struggles. Do you not wonder, he added, his voice lowering to a reverent whisper, if the stars themselves are tangled in prayer? Each one a humble flicker of hope, shining through the vastness, yearning for communion with our souls. Perhaps they beckon us not just to gaze at them but to reflect upon our own Levisa mirror, each light a question waiting to be answered. There was a deep sigh that whisked through the crowd like a gentle wind, releasing the weight of skepticism just enough for the profound to settle in. Faces once shadowed by doubt began to show signs of awakening, an ember of curiosity reflecting in their eyes. Still, in the periphery, the weight of unspoken fears tucked themselves away, ready to surface again when the moment was least convenient. Ezekiel felt the shadows of the future tugging at him, the prophecy that lay just out of reach, still cloaked in enigma. What is it, then, he posed gently, that we must look at within ourselves to take that first step towards the promise of dawn? And what fears must we confront to truly embrace the possibility of what lies ahead, should that dawning light reveal a truth we are not prepared to accept? With each question, the air thickened with the mystery of potential yet unveiled, leaving the crowd suspended in reflection, yearning, and unanswered prayers. The anticipation in the air grew palpable, each breath echoing the weight of curiosity as Ezekiel held the gaze of the crowd. The soft wind transformed into a steady rustle, as if the very universe conspired to deepen the mystery of the moment. He could feel them leaning forward, eager for revelation yet hesitant to unearth truths that might shake the foundations of their understanding. As he looked at the starlit sky, Ezekiel pondered the cosmic language of divine intervention. In our struggles, he said slowly, we often forget that the heavens speak through our silence. The stars that burn brightly above us have witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms, the heartache of the lost, and the whispers of faithful souls. They do not merely illuminate our paths, they call us to remember what has been and ponder what is yet to come. A murmur of uncertainty flowed through the gathering. Some were drawn in, while others shifted uneasily, grappling with the implications of his words. What if the dawn we seek, one man ventured, is not about physical light but about awakening to a deeper understanding, a calling that could demand more from us than we are willing to give? Ezekiel nodded, sensing the truth in his words. The journey toward understanding demands more than passive waiting. It requires an active surrender to the unfolding mystery of our existence. It asks us to look inward and challenge the very essence of our fears, for within those fears lie the keys to our liberation. An elderly woman, her face lined with the etchings of wisdom and experience, raised her trembling hand. But what if the dawn reveals wounds we've buried? What if, instead of light, it casts shadows upon our regrets? Her voice trembled, echoing the silent angst of many. Ah, dear sister, Ezekiel replied, his heart heavy with empathy. The shadows are a necessary part of our journey. They teach us, remind us, and refine us. Just as the potter shapes clay, our struggles transform us into vessels of his purpose. To confront our shadows is not to succumb to despair, but to find the strength to emerge renewed. The crowd wrestled with his insights, the air thick with both hope and fear. He could sense energy dancing within the assembly, a collective spirit willing to explore the edges of discomfort. Yet, deep down, he remained aware of an impending storm foretold yet uncertain, swirling on the horizon like a tempest refusing to reveal its anger until the moment of collision. Do you not feel, Ezekiel continued, that perhaps the challenge lies not solely in our readiness to confront the dawn but in our ability to accept the truth it brings? What if the prophecy I carry, heavy upon my heart, unveils a part of our destiny that strays far from the notions of glory we have crafted? Will we welcome it with open arms, or will we cling to the familiar, resisting a narrative fraught with risk and uncertainty? Silence enveloped them tightly, each heart wrestling with the implications of his question. The stars twinkled more fervently, as if in anticipation of the discussions and revelations yet to come. Faces softened, brows furrowed, and hearts continued their silent debates amid the crowd. As the night deepened, Ezekiel sensed a thin veil of fear. Some hearts were ready to embrace the imminent dawning, while others recoiled at the thought of relinquishing their comfort. The tension hung palpably, unresolved, a reflection of the divide between anticipation and trepidation. Do we dare to embrace what lies ahead? He asked, his gaze sweeping across the gathering, even when the path is shrouded in uncertainty. And if accepting that truth means enduring a journey filled with tumultuous revelations, can we find the courage to step into the light, however raw or transformative it may be? Thus, the gathering found itself at the crossroads of prophecy and acceptance, hovering in a space of contemplation as the shadows of unspoken fears lingered, an unresolved question, drifting like the winds that wrapped around them. In the stillness of that charged night, as the shadows of uncertainty danced upon the faces of the crowd, an unexpected stillness settled over Ezekiel. He felt the weight of a great truth pressing upon him, as if the very heavens were whispering a message meant to be uncovered. Years of trials, stories of hardship, and the lives of countless souls knit together in this moment surged through his mind. Friends, he began, his voice steady yet infused with reverence, the time has come for a reckoning, a moment to shed the fears that have long imprisoned us and to unfurl our wings to embrace what is yet to come. The dawn that lies on the horizon is not merely a break of light, it is a profound call to engage with the promise of transformation waiting for us, a promise that begins when we join our voices, fears, and dreams together. Ezekiel felt a renewed strength as the words tumbled forth, painting images of the collective holdings of their hearts. Deep down, he understood that if they were to rise, it would require not only faith in the unseen but also action that would shake the very roots of their fears. I have seen visions not just of ruin, but of rebirth, a valley of dry bones, yes, but not devoid of life. Through those shattered remnants, the breath of the Almighty will breathe once more, pulling us from the edges of despair, reviving our very essence. His heart soared at the depth of his own faith, and a murmur erupted from the crowd, a blend of hesitation and possibility. A woman with hair dusted in silver, eyes reflecting the starry skies, stepped forward once more. Ezekiel, she said, trembling with urgency, if what you say is true, how do we ignite that breath of life within us? How can we awaken a heart that has been burdened by grief and marked by betrayal? He nodded deeply, for he sensed the root of her query, heavy as it was with the collective grief of generations. The act of awakening requires us to grapple with our shadows, to confront the very sorrows that weigh us down. But that confrontation is only the beginning. The true miracle lies in how we choose to emerge from those shadows transformed, invigorated, ready to forge a new path that unearths our true potential. We must become not just bearers of hope but architects of our own destinies, the crowd murmured once more, hearts fluttering between skepticism and burgeoning faith. As the first droplet of rain fell, a symbol of the divine taking notice, Ezekiel felt that this was the moment the tide would turn. What if every tear we have shed, every silent scream we have swallowed, serves as a catalyst for rebirth? What if these burdens become the wings that lift us into the dawn? He challenged them, the power of his words weaving a spell of awakening in the air. Silence enveloped the gathering, a raw space filled with the weight of their shared struggles. Suddenly, a girl whose eyes had held the sorrow of too many, spoke up, but what if we try and fail? What if we reach for the sky and fall back to earth? Ezekiel felt an ache, knowing all too well the fear of failure. Fear of falling binds us into stagnation. He proclaimed. What if I told you that every fall is covered in grace? That every stumble holds the potential to teach us how to rise again? We are shaped not by the permanence of our scars but by our ability to transform them into revelations. A ripple ran through the crowd, eyes brightened with recognition. For in that moment, as Ezekiel gazed across the sea of faces, he saw a shift of spirit in them, not quite belief, but a flicker of something more profound, a possibility. Let us face the valley of decision. He called, sensing that they stood on the cusp of a new dawn. For beyond this horizon lies not just the answer to your fears, but the reclamation of the promises that were written long ago, inscribed within each of us. Will you walk with me? Will you take that first step into the unknown and discover that each of you carries the potential to be a vessel of light? As he spoke, heavy clouds began to part, revealing soft beams of moonlight filtering through the divine embrace, beginning to illuminate the gathering. The crowd remains whispered, and Ezekiel cast his gaze to the fragile flicker of light illuminating the path, one that beckoned with each heart willing to take the leap. With a collective breath, hesitant souls began to move closer, understanding that sacrifices would be required and that fear would not vanish instantly. But there was a liberating power in the act of choosing to believe, in the decision to step forth side by side into the profound unknown. In that moment, an undeniable revelation broke through. It was the dawning realization that they were not alone. Each heartbeat resonated with mutual struggles, the pain, the hopes, the dreams intertwined in a tapestry of shared existence. Thus, as the first wave of shared trust unspooled among them, the invisible chains of despair fell away, dismantling the fortress of cynicism that had long held them captive. Ezekiel stood taller, infused with the knowledge that their journey had just begun. Tonight, we not only cast off the chains of despair, we unearthed the seeds of hope destined to rise. His voice rang out, filled with a resonance that bridged the heavens and earth, an echo drawing each weary soul toward promise. You are not merely hearers of prophecy, you are co-creators of your own destinies. Rise, and let the dawn reflect not just in the heavens, but in your souls. As the rain began to fall, slowly at first, then more steadily, it connected with the earth like a warm embrace, each drop a reaffirmation of promises yet to unfold. Life awakened anew in every droplet. The crowd felt it, connected with the pulse of the universe, woven together in shared existence, and thus, in the heart of Jerusalem, amid the shadowed history of despair, a new chapter began that encapsulated the very essence of faith, a magnificent revelation that their darkest hour could very well lead to the brightest dawn. They took fragile yet bold steps forward, united in hope and possibility, ready to rediscover what it meant to truly believe, knowing that tomorrow held the promise of miracles yet unseen, ever echoing in the sacred dance of faith and revelation.